Journey through time and uncover the events, people, and civilizations that shaped our world. Welcome to the Vault of History.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to do something seriously ambitious. We are compressing over 1,000 years of incredibly dense, dramatic Roman history, from feral wolf babies all the way to a collapsing bureaucratic mess, into one epic, fast-paced recap. Whether you're already well-versed in antiquity or just looking to connect the historical dots, we're going to cut right through the noise and see exactly how the greatest empire of the ancient world rose, peaked, and eventually destroyed itself. Let's dive in. Here's our roadmap for this journey. We'll be hitting 5 key chapters. 1. Myth, murder, and wolf milk. 2. The Republic's violent villain arc. 3. Caesar, Augustus, and empire. 4. Praetorians, plagues, and pure chaos. And finally, 5. The split and final fall.
All right, Chapter 1. Myth, Murder, and Wolf Milk. Let's get right into the feral origins of Rome. You know, the foundation of Rome wasn't some grand, noble constitution. It was literally a petty sibling argument that quickly escalated into outright murder. Romulus and Remus, the legendary twin founders who were supposedly raised by a wolf, wanted to build a city but couldn't agree on which hill to put it on. Remus saw 6 birds in the sky, but Romulus, he saw 12. Remus called him a cheat, Romulus built a tiny wall, Remus jumped over it to mock him, and Romulus responded by simply killing him. Just like that, Rome was born from blood and a ridiculous dispute over birdwatching.
So, Romulus is now the king. But honestly, Rome was basically just a homeless camp with high ambitions at this point. Desperate to fill his new city, he declared it an asylum city, meaning his demographics were basically chaotic men on the run, slaves, debt dodgers, and criminals. But there was one massive glaring problem. They had 0 women. Romulus's solution to this? An 8th century BC version of a Tinder kidnapping event. They invited their neighbors, the Sabines, to a festival, only to literally kidnap their women and force a merger of their populations. From there, Rome speed runs through 6 more kings. Some built temples, some built massive sewer systems, and yeah, some got assassinated. But that 7th king, he was so incredibly sinister and cruel that the people of Rome just snapped. They expelled him, they were completely done with the concept of a single ruler. In 509 BC, they swore off kings forever and established the Roman Republic instead, putting 2 rotating consuls in charge. Problem solved, right? Well, that brings us to Chapter 2, the Republic's violent villain arc. Time for Carthage, the Gauls, and massive expansion. To understand why Rome became so totally addicted to expansion, you really have to look at their villain origin story. Picture this. Ancient Gauls march into Rome, loot the place, burn it to the ground, and force the Romans to pay a massive ransom just to get them to leave. That humiliation deeply traumatized the Roman mindset. They basically decided right then and there to turn ultra-militaristic and conquer their neighbors so they would never, ever be humiliated like that again. In speaking of conquering, let's talk about the number 37. This represents absolute, pure absurdity in ancient warfare. As Rome expanded, they slammed into a brick wall named Carthage in North Africa, sparking the massive Punic Wars. Carthage's brilliant general, Hannibal, literally marched 37 war elephants over the frozen Alps just to terrorize Rome in its own backyard. Absolutely wild. He wrecked Roman forces for years. But Rome's relentless militaristic machine, it eventually ground them down, ultimately deleting the entire city of Carthage from the historical timeline completely. With Carthage out of the picture, Rome was hopelessly hooked on expansion. They conquered Greece, Spain, Turkey, Gaul, but all this massive growth completely broke their internal political system. Enter Julius Caesar. He basically became the final boss of the Republic. He steamrolls Gaul, marches his loyal army straight into Rome, and starts hoarding political titles. Dictator, consul, head priest, honestly collecting unchecked power like they were Pokemon cards, until the Senate absolutely panicked. Which sets the stage perfectly for Chapter 3, Caesar, Augustus, and Empire, Forging the Golden Age. That intense paranoia over Caesar's unchecked power led the so-called liberators in the Senate to make a very fateful decision, stabbing Caesar 23 times during a meeting. But plot twist, killing the guy who actively lowered taxes, canceled debts, and handed out free grain to the public was a genuinely terrible move. The people loved Caesar. So instead of saving the Republic, those 23 stab wounds immediately triggered a massive, continent-spanning civil war.
Out of that brutal civil war, Caesar's adopted son Octavian emerges victorious. He outmaneuvers all his rivals, totally rebrands himself as Emperor Augustus, and permanently shifts Rome from a supposedly balanced republic into an autocratic empire. Boom! The power didn't live in the Senate anymore. It belonged entirely to a single emperor for life. Now, Augustus was an absolute genius of administration. He didn't actually care about flashy expansion, he wanted permanent stability. He realized that civil wars happened because soldiers were loyal to rogue generals who paid them, not the state. So he institutes this brilliant recipe for stability. He professionalizes the army with 20-year terms and ensures their retirement land is paid for by the government, not their commanders. He time limits generals and focuses entirely on securing fixed borders rather than endless conquest. This was the rock-solid foundation of the Roman Golden Age. But of course, defensive borders aren't exactly foolproof. 20,000. That number represents a chilling reality check for Rome. Deep in the dense mud of the Teutoburg forest, a supposed Germanic ally named Arminius totally betrayed Rome. Because Arminius knew exactly how the Roman legions fought, he led them straight into a devastating ambush. 20,000 professional Roman soldiers were slaughtered. It was such a massive trauma that Rome permanently abandoned conquering Germania, basically drawing a hard line at the Rhine River.
And that takes us to Chapter 4, Praetorians, Plagues, and Pure Chaos. The Descent into Madness. Despite the brilliant administrative setup of the Golden Age, a really dark phase of internal decay eventually takes hold. And the rot started right near the throne. See, Augustus created the Praetorian Guard strictly as an elite protective unit. But over the decades, these heavily armed soldiers, permanently stationed in Rome, realized a fundamental truth. They were the ones holding the swords. They quickly evolved into a terrifying, king-making mob. If they didn't like an emperor, say Caligula, for instance, they simply assassinated him and handpicked his replacement on the spot. Because of this, the legitimacy of leadership just completely collapsed into pure insanity. After Nero took his own life in 68 AD, the empire plunged straight into the year of the four emperors in 69 AD, where literally rival armies just marched on the capital to install their own guys. Military might had 100% replaced legitimate succession. And the absolute rock bottom of this political rot, that hit in 193 AD. The Praetorian Guard actually auctioned off the title of Roman emperor to the highest bidder. No joke. A wealthy man named Emperor Julianus bought the entire Roman Empire with cold, hard cash. He survived a miserable 66 days before he was executed by another general. Power meant absolutely nothing, unless you had the biggest army. All of this internal instability fed straight into the catastrophic crisis of the 3rd century. Rome was battling a terrifying checklist of apocalyptic nightmares. Emperors were turning over almost weekly, massive plagues were wiping out entire cities, hyperinflation totally destroyed the economy, and simultaneous invasions hit from Germanic tribes in the west and Persians in the east. It got so incredibly bad that Emperor Diocletian had to radically chop the bloated empire into 4 separate pieces just to keep the administration from completely flatlining. Which brings us to our final act, Chapter 5, The Split and Final Fall, an empire divided. The real point of no return was an uncontrolled migration crisis that just spiraled into an absolute disaster. Terrifying warriors known as the Huns swept out of the steppe, smashing right into the Goths. This sent tens of thousands of fleeing Goths begging for asylum across the Roman border. Rome let them in, sure, but corrupt Roman officials mercilessly exploited and basically starved them. Pushed to the brink, the Goths revolted, wiped out a Roman army, and actually killed the emperor on the battlefield at Adrianople. It was a fatal blow to Rome's aura of invincibility. Seeing the writing on the wall, Emperor Constantine had already shifted the center of power. The empire formally split. On one side, you have the Eastern Roman Empire, wealthy, Greek-speaking, and safely administered from the massive, fortified city of Constantinople. On the other side, the Western Roman Empire, essentially a bankrupt, Latin-speaking ghost province that was trying to survive by making desperate land deals with armed invaders. It kept getting repeatedly sacked by Visigoths and Vandals because, frankly, it was an easy target. Ultimately, there was no epic, cinematic final battle for the city of Rome. The Western Roman Empire simply died of sheer exhaustion. In the year 476 AD, a Germanic military commander walked right up to the last Western emperor, a kid ironically named Romulus Augustulus, and politely asked him to step down.
The administration folded, and just like that, the Western Empire was dead.
But before you completely write off Rome, I want you to consider this profound question. Did the Roman Empire actually die in 476 AD? Or did the wealthy, powerful eastern half, what we now call the Byzantine Empire, simply rebrand and survive for an astonishing 1,000 more years? It's a massive pivot in history and an entirely different chapter of the Roman story, just waiting for us to uncover its secrets next time. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning history.
History never ends, it only continues through time. Thank you for watching The Vault of History.